co-host anymore.
Wait, it will come. You will be.
Okay.
Put you as a host. Lakshman, after you put when live Facebook is on, you can put Stuart host and me co-host.
Okay, we'll do that.
And then who is going to do the recording?
Stuart GRAUER will be recording here.
So you will record, not me?
Yeah, we'll be recording your talk here.
Okay, very good.
But yes. You can also, Stuart, if you want, you can also record on your computer, you know?
Oh, I don't need to record.
Okay.
Bye. We need just a few minutes, 1 minute or 2 minutes, and then we are good to go.
Abel, est-ce qu'il y a des replays de toutes les conférences?
Oui. Oui, toutes les conférences sont enregistrées et vont se retrouver sur YouTube. There is a YouTube channel for Web-IDEC and all the conferences will be here. Toutes les conférences seront sur la chaîne de YouTube du Web-IDEC.
Super, merci Abel.
When they will be here, quand elles seront là, je mettrai les liens. I will put the links on the website. Sur les sites, je mettrai les liens.
Okay, Abel, now you are the host.
No, it's Stuart who has to be the host.
Yeah,
me.
Can you make him the host now?
Yes, but after Stuart, you have to make me also the co-host, Stuart.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to go into participants? Wait a minute here. So make. Oh, I'm the host. So now I have to make you the co-host?
Yes.
Both the Web-IDEC. Okay. You have to make both.
Both I'll try. Make co-host. And hey, we're getting to be pros here. Make co-host.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay. This is nice.
And
are we all ready? Are we all set?
Okay,
yeah.
Veda, you can begin.
Okay, so the first 5 minutes, I will introduce Stuart GRAUER, our speaker of the evening, and then we'll proceed further. So thank you very much, Stuart GRAUER, for joining us. We're extremely pleased to have you here. I'll spend next few minutes introducing you, and then you have the microphone. Stuart GRAUER is a veteran educator who has taught students in grades preschool through doctoral level. He founded several schools, authored 2 books, the last one, Fearless Teaching, published by Arrow. And he was recently called an educational luminary and poet by Bernard Bull, president of Concordia University. But his points of pride lie more in bow hunting, surfing, and going out of bounds with his teachers and students. His most recent publication appears in Phi Delta Kappa magazine, the oldest educational journal in the US. Joe Brooks, head of Community Works Institute, calls Stuart America's foremost educational storyteller, and he has another one for us today. GRAUER has been interested in education since he was a young man, becoming the principal of a Swiss international school at the age of 29. But his path in leadership ties directly back to his mentors at USD. In 1991, he founded the Grauer School and is considered one of the nation's top authorities on small schools and expeditionary education, and consults and speaks widely about these topics. He has evaluated schools worldwide and taught graduate education courses. He was awarded a Fulbright Administrator Exchange to Argentina, and in 2012, an Amazon Foundation Exchange to China. Dr. GRAUER's writings and work have taken him many times around the globe and have been covered widely, including by the Discovery Channel, the New York Times, International Education Review, ASCD, and frequently in the local press, where he has been named Peacemaker of the Year and a legendary local. His new book, Real Teachers, has been called a wise, lyrical, and liberating book by professional reviewers, but Grauer favors the reading of a teacher from the inner city, LA. Not only did I lose myself in the eloquent narratives that Real Teachers provided, I felt a sense of affirmation that there is more to education than what we have all been focusing on. That's what he says. Stuart was really looking forward to come to Nepal for the IDEC, Real IDEC in person. And I'm pretty confident that he will be amongst us in IDEC 2022, if not early. Stuart, we at Sri Aurobindo Yoga Mandir, we are a community of 200 people living together, living under a roof, having food in the same dining hall, and so on. We are about 200 students and 40 adults living together for the past 27 years. And on behalf of all of us and the IDEC community, we'd like to welcome you to this Web-IDEC. And now the mic is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was a beautiful, beautiful introduction. Much more interesting than I really am. I really appreciate being here. My calendar is set on repeat, so every day for the past several weeks, it comes up and says, fly to Kathmandu. And maybe I'll just leave it like that for a little while longer. Thank you to the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, and thank you, Veda. Thank you, Abel, and all the organizers who have asked me to present 45 minutes to you and then questions. And let's throw some love to Sir Ken, whose spirit I'm incredibly honored to help carry on during this hour through my work as an educator, as I know Ken's family is doing. I'd like to start out with something just beautiful and non-intellectual this morning. I'm just gonna play a 2-minute slideshow for you for pure enjoyment, whatever time zone you're in. Enjoy this.
Kanane fa kanane malide kele iye ne malide be barala. Kanane fa kanane malide kele iye ne malide be barala. Mali surun be barala mali je mi semye kamalenye. O mali kamalemba. O mali kamalemba, beko mali kamalemba. Nivan kele kananga areme kele kechouye kamalenye. Nivan kele kananga areme kele kechouye kamalenye. Beko sunjata ye kamalenye, sunjata no kanchouye kamalenye. O mali kamalembo. Mali de no sunjata no kante uye kamalenye. Mali de no sunjata no kanche uye kamalenye. E mali denu, e sunjata no kanche uye kamalenye. Kanane fa kanane malide kele iye ne malide mbe barala. Kanane fa kanane malide kele iye ne malide.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Thank you, everybody. I wanted to give you a little background in who I am, where I'm coming from, and my world. And thank you again, friends, and especially to you kids from the ashram who are showing up. It's nice to see everybody from all ages here. And welcome friends zooming in from afar in all the different continents, and for supporting IDEC. And I'm not strictly a democratic educator, so I can say you might be surprised to hear how profound an impact this movement, the IDEC movement, has world over in all kinds of schools. And thank you for all that. So once again, my name is Stuart GRAUER, and I'm a school founder and a writer and a surfer from Southern California. Stuart for my Nordic seafaring heritage, and Grauer from my Alpine ghetto heritage. And less than a century ago, my parents literally shocked all their families and forebears by marrying their heritages across the continent of Europe. Far before anyone could imagine a gathering like this across all borders. And this is what IDEC can do. Such a beautiful gathering of teachers all here together. The profession of Socrates, of Sir Ken Robinson, of Einstein and Krishnamurti, the noblest of professions, and perhaps the second oldest one. And now I'm in my 46th year as an educator. 30 years ago, I founded the Grauer School. And today I want to pass along a story to you and hope that I can share the essence of all these years of labor and luck and the genuine pursuit of bliss. This story, The Moon in a Jar, is for all of you. 5 years before I was born in New York, a great war ended in which 407,000 Americans were killed, and we had entered into an age of peace and prosperity. I still think of it as the Leave It to Beaver era, though that might not mean much to all of you. I passed the time running outdoors, playing cowboys and Indians in a blissful world. It was the America of policemen who played ball with the kids out on the fields and moms who stayed at home. A whole new definition of privilege was being created back then. Suburbs were invented, and I grew up in one, a racist town called Manhasset on Long Island, named after an Indian tribe that was extinguished. Where I taught in, I was taught there that in New York City was a place of grittiness and meanness, and it was an unsafe place, and any city was. Small schools legend Deb Meyer once told me that her proposed purpose of schooling was to prepare all citizens to be members of the ruling class. That was me. And let me remind you first that hardly a single child in history has ever spoiled themselves. And second, my parents lost it all as I came of age anyway. If not for that, perhaps I'd never have ended up as a teacher, much less start a school in a borrowed storefront with 4 credit cards. Manhasset was the home of orthopedic surgeons and fur coat manufacturers, executives and yachtsmen who lived in estates. Behind my sprawling childhood ranch house in Manhasset lay thick green woods. My earliest memories are of running wild through the soft forest paths on summer nights. No sense of boundaries. I remember filling my pockets with stones for throwing or collecting. In the United States, fireflies are hard to find these days, but back then they weren't. On summer nights in the forest, we illuminated glass jars with fireflies we had caught from around the low-hanging tree branches, the moon in a jar, then set them free. Back then, in the woods, we were indigenous and tribal, free to scout and roam as far as our child legs could carry us. And then, on my 6th birthday, we all sensed something in the works, like a permanent end of summer, where you're going back to school forever, if you can imagine that. The loud and grinding land movers made their first clearance into my childscape. I had visions of green, and I said to my dad, maybe they're putting in a big park. He didn't know. And by the time my 7th birthday came, I strapped on my leather gun belt, drew my Colt 45 cap guns, and peering through the chain link fence that had just been put up, now stood right where I roamed and climbed trees up till then. I snapped off rounds of caps toward the new B. Altman's department store and Newberry's 5 and 10, and DeViga's jumbo sporting goods and appliance store. The giant new mall was called the Miracle Mile. Miracles. At that young age, I became a master at hopping that 5-foot fence, even though the chain links were topped with barbs. And eventually I got a hacksaw and cut an opening so that it formed a V, and we could just slip right through, like passing into Twilight Zone. And I ran and zigzagged through the cars parked across the flat black macadam lot, where for centuries beforehand, rabbits and robins and spiders had coexisted in their natural habitat, now gone forever. I would disappear for mornings or afternoons into the alleys and doorways of the sparkly new shops and enter into a new fluorescent microclimate with no sense of the forest expiry. Too young to weep for the loss of our woods and the rich soil, the death of a squirrel beneath a skip loader. In the new mall, in packs of 2 or 3 kids, we roamed, weaving in and out of the big stores, learning the best aisles and stairways as if they were passages to grottos. It wasn't like roaming in the woods. It was a new kind of wild, but our instinct to play was the same, and we looked subconsciously for new species. We lined our pockets with trinkets. One day lifting a 5-cent candy bar, another day a pencil charm, stupid stuff, a pack of juicy fruit gum. Gathering in the wild became the game, and we became unwitting, light-fingered thieves. My brother branded our jaunts as hawking sprees. Let's go on a hawking spree, he'd say, and we were off. We slipped through the chain link passage into a forest of linoleum trails where we roamed and chased and escaped. We were innocent and subversive at once, a paradox you find mainly in human children and foxes. I stalked a Rawlings genuine cowhide baseball in the sporting goods store, aromatic and sensual, stuffed it into my clothing, and we made our getaway, endorphins rushing. Like so many others who lose their lands, we had become poachers and outlaws. And for me, this all occurred in a sort of dream state. I don't recall having much guilt about it, any of it either, until I was around the age of a 6th grader, maybe 11 years old. And one day, right around then, my mother asked, "You don't have any money. Where did you get that baseball scorebook?" And at that point, the truth sunk in and the dream ended. It was one of those times in life when one thing is ending and another is starting. You can't tell. That's what this story is about. Anyhow, I forgot about all this shame for literally something like 40 years And all the while, childhood changed and school changed. Something was shifting in the Western world, and maybe the East too. Over this time, we watched the walk to school disappear. Aimless breaks and free time became supervised and timed. Open spaces gone. Gone was childhood free play, along with tremendous percentages of all the world's forests. Daily experiences of things like the smell of soil, the sight of the same night sky that guided the ancients, were becoming merely abstractions for children in schools. Everything to be learned in school seemed to be determined by joyless so-called experts from afar, experts who turned everything into standards and measurables. Eventually, a lot of Western parents started thinking their job was to create a perfect world of innocence, sort of like shopping mall developers, to create a privileged class. Over that 40 years, childhood games got timers. Free play was replaced by sporting events with grown-ups watching every move and counting and scoring everything. Everything got boundaries, and I have absolutely no idea why, but I had become a teacher, which seemed a lot safer than a writer or a surfer. In my early career as a history teacher in a large school, I put on a tie every day and tried to conform to the weatherless world of desks in rows and time periods that ended with drilling buzzers that seemed to go off inside your head. I coped by starting clubs. You have to mute over here. I coped by starting clubs and hosting student activities and staging events at school. And I knew I was risking my job when I was doing all that stuff. Eventually, my first boss said, "Don't go into teaching. You're not cut out for it. You don't want to be a teacher," I was told. You know, today, decades later, I can tell you I received the University of San Diego highest career achievement award for my work as a teacher. And I've trained teachers all over the world, but I doubt any of them know what I'm going to tell you now, that I was fired from my first 2 teaching jobs. I could never conform. I wanted to be deep in the forest, but I always felt like I was roving about in the shopping mall. Something was wrong. I didn't belong. You need to find your people. You need to take matters in your own hands sometimes. You need real connection if it's going to be a real school. But the schools I knew were not places of freedom or connection like that. Not for me, not for teens. I started noticing the way teens moved in insecure packs, heads tilted together. Many teens felt trapped, roving packs of kids detached from nature, detached from adults, detached from mentors, and even from parents. Teens with no voice. High schools were not designed for teens. They were designed for teachers. How could we add democracy and freedom into our days as real teachers of real teens? For my part, I had heard people could start their own schools, and I'd even met some of them, generally small schools where you did not need a requisition form from the central office just to go outdoors. And much later on, I would meet Jerry Mintz, who helped start schools for a living. In 1991, I borrowed a shopping mall suite and started my own school. So there you have it. After all those years, there I was back in a shopping mall. I didn't have any money, but the landlord lent me the space till I could get students. The irony, and every year the school grew until we could not fit in the mall anymore. And by then, we were on the road a lot anyway, using the whole region as our classroom. We needed a permanent site. Then one day, like a miracle, I found myself standing at the highest place on a large plot of land where we now have the permanent home, contemplating what we might do to turn a patch of raw coastal sage from California and maritime chaparral bushes into a school. The site that we were looking at was right around the corner from a surfing break and across from the California Lagoon and Bird Flyway. And I thought I could reclaim a piece of the natural world and give it to teens forever and make it a school where they might have a voice. So on that spot, we pulled in a bunch of portable trailers, circled them up like a wagon train, and founded the site now called the Grauer School. Unlike other schools in our area, which are mostly asphalt, I left behind several acres of native habitat and wildlife to be part of the campus, just raw, undeveloped, and native, no buildings on it, no nothing except a few trails where kids can rove and run wild. It includes sage and pepper grass, wild cucumber, wild morning glory, honeysuckle, lizards, hummingbirds, an owl, wrens, endangered gnatcatchers, 4 kinds of sparrows, squirrels and wood rats and snakes, 24 kinds of butterflies, all coexisting just 20 miles outside of the city. We preserved our wilds and shall forever be short of parking. Before we knew it, there were kids running Renegade through our wilds, pure open space, and this is where I am today on Zoom. You know, a week ago, my calendar read leave for Kathmandu, as I mentioned before, but here we are exiled from travel, lit up for long days behind glass Zoom boxes. My favorite thing to do in Zoom or live is watch kids, especially if they're outdoors. Watching kids everywhere. I love watching middle schoolers run through the wilds. I can even imagine what's back there in our forest preserve. And I imagine what was planted many years ago by the Kumeyaay Native Indians living in rhythm of seasons before we ever thought to go there. Generations before we showed up with our Western domination and Western conception of schooling. Back in our wilds, high school students dream. They're looking for a quiet wander back there, or maybe a first kiss beneath the Mexican elderberry, or a place to hide, or to cry. Strumming a guitar in the sandy wash we've lined with native tree stumps beneath the Torrey pine tree. Every year, our environmental science class is deep in studying the land that we're actually on, till around 8 months ago, when, as epidemiologists explain, a virus originating in some distant forest, probably brought to the city by poachers and outlaws, a coronavirus hitching a ride on a pangolin or a bat, escaped and shut us all down. Preserving our wilds has not been a way of the world. When we encroach upon the wild can unleash its powers back on us, and this last one is the coronavirus. The pandemic has caused us to do many things we wanted to do all along, to become a more democratic school, to listen to students better. We needed more outdoor education anyway, more forest education, more study of the land. At the Grauer School, we've added a garden classroom. We've added a treehouse classroom, a Mexican palapas and sand classroom, and some classrooms that really are just oak trees with power cords running up to them. And they're our most beautiful classrooms ever. Over my past 46 years as a teacher, we've been watching the whole definition of intelligence change in schools. Historically, intelligence refers to sensitivity to the environment. If you're not attuned to natural environmental forces, how can you be called intelligent? Someday we may rediscover intelligent people don't die in the wild. The Dutch have an old rite of passage ceremony called dropping, where they drop their coming of age children off in a forest for a night in summer so that they can make their way around, absorb, contemplate. I've watched children from the Maasai tribe take off on vision quests and walkabouts. And at the Grauer School, we've brought back an ancient educational requirement, the rite of passage ceremony for every 9th grader, every new high schooler. These are great resources for you if you want to add an outdoor ritual to your school. David Blumenkrantz writes about outdoor rites and quests in Coming of Age the Right Way. No doubt many schools would brand activities like those as dangerous. But what are the dangers of severing the lives of our children from the natural world, or permanently disturbing our ecosystems, or not understanding our place on the planet? What are the dangers of turning the wilds over to the highest bidder? I'd love to hear your stories of school rites of passage. I collect them, send them along if you can, or your stories of connection to the natural world in a school environment. This amazing time of pause, our man-made world coming to a halt, has helped us see more clearly the cost of taking from the natural world more than we can give back. We've turned the wilds into our hawking spree. This time of isolation makes it clearer than ever that nature will abide with us or without us. You've heard of anthropocentrism, the belief that humankind is central or most important as an element of existence, especially as opposed to God or animals. But when we take ourselves out of the balance of nature, our greatest harm comes to ourselves, to our children, and to theirs, and of course to their schools. To me, the wilds is the ultimate symbol for democratic education. The wilds is the ultimate school, the free school, and the ultimate path to reclaiming our only sustainable and sane definition of intelligence, sensitivity to the environment. Naturally, symbols like this drove many of you into self-directed and democratic education to begin with. Modern education is built upon a myth of reliability. The fallacy that reliability is some kind of core value or life purpose. In this myth, students benefit the most if they all get the same consistent outcomes. In the myth of reliability, all that matters is the end, no matter how you get there or what you learn along the way. And I think we're all here at the IDEC out of our concern for that. We're here for the same reason we go to the wilds, the same reason we insist that play must be a part of our days at school. The myth of reliability works for students and teachers who are seeking high scores, who define education narrowly and seek primarily the answers and not the questions. We want to find ways to make our schools more democratic, so we're here together. Few can be fully democratic schools. Few can realistically create their entire programming around this process. And many of you are looking for ways to help schools that need a hand. We all need three things to be more democratic: inspiration, imagination, and permission. Even if you're not a democratic school, even if you feel your school is stuck, all schools can create the conditions for increasing student voice and their promotion of personal passions. I call these conditions pockets of democracy. We find these pockets in small places in every school, and I'll mention 6 examples of them that you can use. You can create pockets of democracy for student efficacy, no matter what kind of school you have. Pocket 1, get outside. We're all increasing the amount of time we spend in class out of doors. Research shows that in nature, we're more creative and empowered. China moved from 18% urban to 80% urban in a generation or two. The forces to cut down our forests and have us all in malls and warehouses are overwhelming. And IDEC schools say no to this by planting and growing, even in urban schools. The most marked trend in the past decade by far, even in urban environments, is nature. An edible forest in Mexico City, inner city school gardens in central Los Angeles and the Bronx and Detroit. Suddenly, 15% of the world's food is grown in cities. Do a web search for school garden grants in the US and be surprised. Our schools have chickens and orchards and herb gardens and harvest festivals and kitchens. This great movement has taken hold in schools all over. Hardly a single democratic school is without a garden, or at least aspiring to one soon. Garden is a natural learning hub. 2 of 6 pockets. The Socratic method. Ahura Mazda, a Zoroastrian guest speaker to our religion class last week, said something that gave me pause. Wisdom, he said, never believes. Wisdom always investigates. Socratic and inquiry-based teaching is, to me, the ultimate basis for democratic education. Inquiry-based teachers give their students a voice, but this way of teaching is not for beginners, simple as it sounds. You can have a forest school, but if students have to march through single file, what good is your democracy? If your teacher is controlling and domineering, what good is that forest? The key to democratic education is not the morning meeting, nor is the key inclusive policy making, in my opinion, though those can be great tools and wonderful ways to convene. The gold standard is the actual teaching relationship. The Socratic method is deceptively simple to describe, but it takes only the greatest teaching masters to attain. If you've ever seen a Socratic teacher at work, you can see the deep probing, the absence of ego, the deeply held values emerging. This is not just students answering questions. It is students being prompted to dig deep into their values that lie beneath their thoughts. The Socratic teacher is probing for the background assumptions that lay behind their first words. Nothing comes close in democratic education as a change process to probing students until they're aware of the reasons for their answers that they give. Have you ever asked a student why 7 times? Think that's easy? Classes versed in Socratic method tend to self-organize. When given complex tasks, they're seeking connection and process and shared purpose, more than they're seeking even the right answer. One of the best Aero conference seminars I ever attended was one where the conference presenter did not show up. Around 20 of us there at Long Island University naturally, organically moved into a leaderless circle and covered the topic with sensitivity and depth, guided only by our caring for the shared wisdom of those in the room. This simple question of how did you arrive at that idea? Or why? And of course, what if are the ultimate freedom tools. Why? Because empathic listening is the simplest defining characteristic of democratic and Socratic education of them all. Even if we're a teacher trapped in a test and ranked district, we must risk our job to do this kind of listening. We are democratic teachers. Socratic teaching is the democratic nirvana. What if, instead of grading your students on the content and actual subject information, you graded them on their intellectual curiosity, just their curiosity, their pursuit? Pocket 3, a proposal process. At the Grauer School, we offer college prep work to all who want it, but it's up to them. Students can petition for anything they want. What is a petition? You want to take a course for honors? You want to start a club? Let's hear how and why. It is not a form, but if you detail who, what, when, where, and why, maybe how, and if you're willing to get that petition knocked back 3 times or 5 times till it's clear, till every I is dotted, if you can do however many drafts it takes till everything is clear, airtight, and defensible, and you have a group of signers who will follow through with you and a faculty sponsor, then your proposal passes, no matter what it is. New classes are formed this way, and so are dances, school purchases, class trips, whatever, and never give your students a form to fill out. Again, the real petition, the form, has to reflect the inside of that student's mind and the probing it's gone through. It's never a standard form. One of my favorite proposals are seniors petitioned to have a senior ditch day. After about 3 drafts, it got through. They won that round. A few of these students recently petitioned to have their afternoons off during the pandemic, to have They petitioned to have increasing broadband on the internet. Their dress code petition failed. That has to happen now and then too, or the process is not real. If you can never say no, you can't really say yes. Most of the best activists, events, and even major purchases at our school arise from student proposals. You can have a proposal process in your class, even at the most standardized test-based school in the world. Pocket of democracy, 4 of 6, is mastery learning. You want grades? That's up to you. Why not offer students to pick? They can have their work graded, pass, fail, or just audit. What do you care? And students, if you do want grades, what should your minimum grade be to succeed? What is success? What do you want your level to be on the honor roll? That's your mastery learning level. If you score below it, you get it back and you keep working on it for as many drafts as it takes. Our teachers will keep grading it and giving it back till you have it where you want it, just like a playwright or a law brief or a novelist working with an editor. Want to be on the honor roll? Tell us what GPA you think is right for that. Once again, students, if you want to take any classes in honor class for honors credit, negotiate a contract with your teacher. What do you want to investigate that will take you into the beyond? Sir Ken Robinson once said, human communities depend upon a diversity of talent, not a singular conception of ability. In the usual definition of honors, every student is doing more of the same. How does that advance human communities? It is honorable if it comes from inside the individual student as an expression of creativity or pursuit of universal values. 5, pocket 5, I want to talk about money. You think you're democratic? What if your school should thrive or has? And what if you achieve Deb Meyer's ultimate goal? And through your hard work and great fortunes, your school should gain in privilege. Is that pride? Don't forget your school's investment policy. Many democratic schools are too small to have investment policies, but many among us here also aspire to financial sustainability and long-range success. We do not want our work to die with us. Pope Francis is saying just this week, one way to encourage change is to lead companies through the urgent need to commit to the integral care of our common home, excluding investments in companies that do not meet environmental parameters and rewarding those that do. It is proper and ethical for democratic schools to be looking into investment policies that sustain, and democratic students may feel uniquely charged with influencing our schools and governments. At the Grauer School, our board passed a resolution last year that we have been divesting our endowment funds and also our teacher endowment funds from savings that are not screened for social and environmental sustainability and ethics. Almost every investment firm now has these to offer. Write me if you want a sample resolution. On our faculty, we talk about our retirement fund being our future security. I'm getting some irony there. Our teachers are all environmentally conscious, but it turns out that their retirement funds were tied up in all sorts of corporations, complicit in things like soil depletion of big ag, even child labor or sex trafficking, a part of literally trillions of corporate dollars invested in short-term profit making. This is a massive problem no democratic school with any endowment or reserve can ignore. And are you a democratic school, but purchasing a ton of plastic? Let's connect those dots from plastic waste generation to the ability to sustain our schools and communities 7 generations down the line. Not buying plastic is one of the hardest things I've ever tried to do. I heard of one school that had a no garbage basket policy. Pack it in, pack it out. Every student, 0 waste. Thank you so much for listening so far. I'm going to mention pocket 6 of 6, and then we'll have time for questions. 6 is Measure what matters and promote those measurements. We know many schools claim that they're run by a set of values, and then they promote a bunch of achievement test scores to establish their worth, or their class rankings or college ranks. New tests are coming on the market, which are substitutes for standardized achievement tests, and thousands of schools are switching. Some of your schools need to demonstrate effectiveness. We understand that. And a school often has to show some results. But until recently, the standardized test was the expected quantitative way. New measures are coming on the market fast and being normed. And now you can be empirically driven, which you must, by measuring values and not just test scores. These new test measures powerful democratic values like inclusion, connectedness, and student engagement. You can drive real change using tests like these. The Panorama Survey for schools, it measures school culture and climate and student perceptions, and it gives you benchmarking norms so you can see where you stand and you can communicate to the public where you've landed. The HESKI, High Schools Survey of Student Engagement, and the Middle School Survey of Student Engagement measure student and teacher engagement levels that show you real percentiles, so you have data that's not just the same old standardized test, data on values you care about. These norms are reliable and defensible as you represent your worth as an alternative school, and many of you need to demonstrate that to a wider community. Despite so much popular misconception, everyone here in this Zoom room knows the truth. Smaller schools are not less by virtue of their size. They're more in so many ways. So let's prove it. We have to represent our work and to build widespread confidence. Student values, character surveys, and batteries give us small schools the ammo we've always needed. These surveys give you norms that critics cannot ignore. We can measure character and social emotional development, and for the first time, display it quantitatively for the world. And we never, ever need to prep for these tests or game any systems. All we need to do is be more Socratic. You can show the impact your school has. I love these measures because they mean so much more to me than the standard academic percentile numbers. What we're after here is not just democratic process in school and not just measurable, but creating open spaces for open minds that are developing socially, emotionally, academically, intellectually, spiritually, and these are embodied. We need these embodied by our graduates who we trust will devote themselves to peace and to a sustainable world, not just a resume building. Measure what matters. At the Grauer School, we don't have a valedictorian. Our main core value, as stated, is resourcefulness. And so our highest award at graduation is the Resourcefulness Award. Last year, it was given to Sophie, who read a 742-page book with her teacher, Peter, which led her to launch an environmental justice project intended to help determine the fate of the next generation. Another honoree was a student who was a Carnegie Hall performer, who also swam with whale sharks. She missed around 1/3 of her senior year and still got the school's highest award while practicing 5 to 7 hours a day on her music and using her winnings of a classical concert to buy an electric cello so she could busk on the street corner and give away her earnings. That's my kind of valedictorian. So what do you measure at your school? What do you honor? How do the real values play out in your school programs? Those are 6 among many pockets of democracies, and I hope you find many more. In sum, I want to draw a line from habitat disturbance all the way back to the riddle of childhood loneliness and loss. And here's that line. Not only do our children need choices and voices, all student minds on some level need a whole world of wild freedom. Our bodies need natural, unfensible space and clean air and water. Our eyes need unbroken sky to be 20/20. no matter how many masterpieces we read. Nature is our medicine, open space is the ultimate expedition, and freedom is often found in the smallest places back in there. In and out of the classroom, high trust, low threat environments and relationships change the brain. They cause clearer reflection. As a school founder, I started out in a shopping mall, but this can be a pure forest of freedom once we learn to listen, even in a shopping mall. I'm going to finish up with something that astonished me recently and motivated me to write this speech. Just this year, our school's garden became so lush that we had more snails than ever. And usually that would be a headache. Who wants them? You know, fireflies prefer wet habitats that better support snails, their favorite food. And only a few fireflies have ever been discovered in Southern California. And just this past summer, I meandered down to the school, to the garden on an evening to grab some sunflowers that were overgrowing down there. And I pulled up an hour after dinner time, before bedtime, went in through the creaky garden door and got distracted by something hovering and flashing lightly over the little garden pond where we'd hooked up a solar pump. For the first time in decades, fireflies. Fireflies remind us that we've got to let our light shine to be seen and attract the good stuff we desire in our lives. Fireflies coming back to my life means freedom and hope. Many of you know what it feels like to lose your freedom. Many educators know what it likes to lose your small school to district consolidation. I've helped some of you prevent this through my work at Small Schools Coalition. Many of you have set out as well-intentioned teachers who had to learn the hard way that you can always end up alone or disconnected from nature. What an enormous gift when you finally sense that disconnect. What can you do to keep our little parts of the natural world and the Socratic relationship alive in your school, even amidst this chaos? This question is why we're democratic educators and what gives us abiding faith in student spirit, in the human capacity to be generous, creative, kind, and compassionate. No matter what, we can be the warriors we need. What could possibly be more valuable than knowing the wilds, even in school, or experiencing the freedom and the connection that we find there? Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. We have time for questions now.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Now we will open up the questions. Please hop in the mic and just feel free. I think that, should that work? Stuart, is that okay?
That's wonderful.
Okay. So let's start.
I'll start. Wow. First of all, thank you, Stuart. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Julie. Thank you.
I was really moved to hear everything that you read and really appreciate obviously how much life you've brought to your life. And I'm so moved right now. Thank you. I've never heard of a core value of resourcefulness, and I'm grateful for that as well. And I think about us as adults and how so many of us have not had the privilege of growing up and learning in the environments that we're now creating and trying to create for the children, to use each other. And I'm wondering about the team, the adults that are involved in your community, and how you bring each other, or how you bring people on, how you hire them, who they are, and your approach to
That's a wonderful question, and thank you, Julie. I don't have an easy answer for you because I have trained every teacher. I have about 30 teachers, and probably at least 20 of them never intended to go into teaching. There are people that I talked into becoming teachers and spend a long time mentoring them. Do not hire a teacher, trained or untrained, and expect them to be functional significantly without at least 3 semesters of very close holding hands. Every teacher at our school gets a close mentor to work with for those 3 semesters. I also think that if your teacher has been dyed in the wool in another type of system from yours for, more than 5 years, they may have a cognitive dissonance that they may have a difficult time owning up to. So I hate saying anybody is hopeless, but schools are a way of seeing. So the answer is building these teams over time with very close mentoring. And the second thing that you have to have is once you get a number of those close people to you, they become your leadership team and they start emanating out because you're really creating teams of teams here. I hope I answered. You can ask me to clarify anything there if you like, Julie.
No, I'm really excited to hear the answer, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I'll follow up at some point. Yeah, no, that's I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Julie, one other thing, and I think you can see this through the kind of talk I give, is that you have to have that ability to translate your values directly into action. And not that many people can do that, honestly. And so we read books together and we try to talk about theory. Every week, I reboot the school philosophy. And when I talk to other school heads, they're not really talking about the mission. But we talk about the mission, which is the philosophy and what our purpose is constantly. And if a student shows up and is not wanting to do anything, sometimes I'll just say, well, what do you want? Why did you come today? You don't have to be here. And just rebooting it back to that purpose. Other questions?
Hi, I am from Los Angeles. I teach kindergarten in the Los Angeles Unified School District. So it's really it's so inspiring to hear you, and it's really difficult to find that pocket. But I do every day and have not fortunately lost my job. So I wonder, it's a big task.
Yeah.
It's a very big task. There have been very difficult years. I'm wondering, it was by chance I happened upon this particular talk, but I'm wondering, do you ever, I don't know how to ask this, do you ever do, I know doing outreach seems really silly because that's such a different thing, but do you ever have relationships and connections with public educators and public schools in which they can grow alongside you?
Yes, we have partner schools all over the world where the Grauer School is a UNESCO affiliated school. So we have 176 partners all over the world, and we sometimes meet with them. And I have mixed results in the public arena. Some of them, like you, have said, yeah, I'm looking for those pockets. But I just have to tell people when they complain bitterly about how their job is impossible, that's not okay. I mean, if you can acknowledge you're just doing it for the money, or you have to risk your job. And Zena, it sounds to me like you're doing that. And sometimes risking your job is as simple as knowing how far to let a digression unspool, because the kids think it's really cool and they're getting away with something, but they're loving it and they're getting into a pocket. And so I was a tenured public school teacher. And I have to say that the union was never very thrilled with me. And I'm so happy I have that experience because it helps me understand what you're going through. The district I worked at had been through almost a semester-long shutdown. So I was always willing to risk my job, and go for it. That's the only thing I can really say. Just like sometimes in the political arena right now, there are certain things that you cannot let stand. Sometimes you have to speak out, and it's tough. If you can't say no, you've lost the power to say yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Grauer, we have a question here in the chat box.
Okay.
The first question, the question is by Dilipa Manawadu. She asks, what are the traits to look for teacher, coach, facilitators? We understand that a teacher qualification probably might even be a disqualification. And the second question, if I can ask you now, can you share some of the Pocket 6 alternative measurements?
Sure. Those are two very different kinds of questions, and I'm not sure I can answer them quickly, but the traits of teachers, I'll never forget one teacher who came in, and I had a beautiful, calm Labrador Retriever in the school, and he was applying for a teacher job, and he said to me, does the Board of Health know about that dog in the school? And I thought, he's not going to be a teacher here. And the next candidate came out, and I watched her as she, I like to watch my candidates after interviews, watch them walk out. And outside in the parking lot, there was the dog, and she knelt down and grabbed it and looked at it in the eyes and rubbed its jowls. And I thought, that's a good person. And I hope that's not a silly story. I'm looking for empathic communication. I'm looking for warmth. I believe that everything is energy. And when you're with a person, you know whether they have energy, and you have to sense that kind of energy, such as Zena was just giving us. You can feel that. And obviously, you should sit in on as many teacher interviews as you can if you're new at it, because it can take years to begin to assess some of these things. And I don't hold it against you if you have a teaching degree. I think that's lovely. It's interesting that so many of my teachers, after a year or two of teaching, have gone back and gotten enrolled in master's degree programs and then gotten master's degrees. A lot of them, not just a few. And I think that's wonderful. As far as the second part of the question, what are some of the assessments of values? There are two basic kinds. If you decide what your school values are and put those values, ask questions which you think determine those values on Likert type scales like 1 through 5, you can turn qualitative data into quantitative data. And if you ask those same questions every year for 3 years, all of a sudden you have longitudinal data. So you can start to get reliability in your own school. That's a semester-long course in educational evaluation in one sentence. Second thing you can do is to use either the Panorama survey or the HESI or a middle school survey of student engagement, and start to research some of these other normed batteries. And what we're looking for, something that has norms that can apply to your school, such as in your nation or global norms. And I'm not talking about PISA norms or standardized achievement tests or college boards. I'm talking about tests that you can give to students that measure their connection to school or their engagement levels. These are the types of things that are showing, because everybody in the room is a democratic educator. You're here because you know once the students have the engagement and have the ownership and have the voice, the rest takes care of itself. They'll jam the content down their own selves. So that's why we measure what matters. And so I hope I answered those two complex questions quickly and helpfully. Derry, looks like you got a question, but you're muted. You're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that. No, I loved your talk. I created a democratic class in an English high school some years ago, and I fully expected to get fired. These were 11-year-olds who just failed a standardized test. It had really destroyed their confidence. We used to do this and still do in some parts of England, a barbaric test at 11. So you either go to the high school that takes you to university or the high school that doesn't take you anywhere. So I created a democratic class in the high school that didn't take you anywhere, and fully expected to get fired. But after a year, when this grade moved up a grade, I got put in charge of all 7 classes of that year group. And that was even more terrifying than getting fired. But that's another discussion. But lovely talk. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations. You're a risk taker and a hero. Great story. Write it up.
I just written a book, actually. I'll put it in chat.
Put it in the chat. Everybody should buy it.
It's an ebook, and I'll put a code. You can get it for $2.45, so it's a bargain.
Thank you, Terry. And Veda, I think you're monitoring the chat room. I can't multitask at that level, so feel free, Veda, to let me know if there's any chats. It looks like Nevin has a question.
May I have questions, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, may I have a question? I'm French. I have a short experience with my 10 years ago with my farm. I had a farm with herbals, medicinal plants, and my way to welcome children was to provide sensorial visits. Do you understand? I'm sorry for my accent. Okay, but what I have seen is very important because sensorial energy informations children keep with their eyes, with ear, with nose, to smell, with the touch. It's just unbelievable because it is really the way to be linked with nature. It is really the way to be linked with life. And my question to you is, are you teaching those things in your school? I mean, because it makes children more conscious, in consciousness with their bodies, the way the body is able to understand and to keep informations, to analyze informations, and so they are more in autonomy with their body and with environment. You understand what I mean?
I think so. You're wanting to know whether our students are integrating nature and animals into their studies.
But with a way of energy and of sense, with the 5 senses.
Yeah, with the 5 senses. You know, I have a funny story about that. We're in Southern California here, and I'm up against a lot of pressure. Even though our school is completely against putting these kinds of pressure on our students, and we work constantly, it's just there. And so many of them were getting anxious. In the United States, and I think in many other countries right now, anxiety is at epidemic levels. So even at the Grauer School, we're having to help chill kids out and get them away from this way of seeing. So for several years now, every year during final exams, we are bringing on a petting zoo onto the campus, or else we'll bring on a cage in the middle of the campus with a bunch of puppies in it. And you should see what happens to the kids. It's absolutely amazing. It could be a scientific experiment. Now, we do have dogs on our campus, but they have to be screened carefully. A two or older year Labrador Retriever, for instance, is particularly calm and beautiful and loving. Certain types of dogs are well suited for animals. And we have chickens, and certain kids go out there and love to nurture them. And I think what you're going for, Paz, here is not a sense of studying animals, but a sense of nurturance and connection to nature. Is that right?
Yes, it's right. And I have seen, you know, one just with the touch, one is rough and one is soft. And for them, it's very important because they improve their language and they improve their feeling and they know better their body. For example, smelling something, they say, oh my God, it go first to the lungs. So this herbals is good for lungs. And
Yes.
I
Well,
think it's a nice way to teach children to know better their body and to know better the flowers and herbals. This one is good for that. This one is good for that.
yeah. And I'm getting a sense that you don't necessarily mean formal teaching so much as you mean just general exposure and having the students have access to all of these things. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Wonderful. And I also want to say, Paz, that during my talk, you were a wonderful presence, and I appreciated it.
Namaste.
I think
Namaste.
what Paz was talking was about aromatherapy. Am I right?
Yes, but not only, yes, of course. Olfactotherapy, olfacto. With nose, not only with essential oil.
I think that we can address this question about the relationship to democratic education with the environment of the school, because some of the other schools made fun of me back in the 90s, and they said, well, Stuart School is just bean bags and puppy dogs. And I had to fight with them and say, what's wrong with bean bags and puppy dogs? Your kids are a stressed out wreck. But let's talk about some other environmental factors that we can have. Yes, I buy candles and aroma scenting units for most of my teachers and very much advocate for them. All of our classes go indoors and outdoors. And also we have, instead of bells, I have created with our computer program, a program called Zen Bells. And it's programmed to the school. We have a block schedule, so our periods are extra long. But between them and during lunchtime and before and after school, instead of a grinding buzzer or a bell, what you get is very soft floating music like Baroque music or ocean waves comes in, and you can hardly even know when the period ends. And so when I go to other schools, large schools, when the period ends, you know it because kids pound out of the door, and it's almost like an interruption. And it's disturbing to see a change of period in many large schools. But at our school, it's just a lovely thing. You're not quite sure it's even happening, and all of a sudden it gradually is building up. And yeah, you can see, oh, I guess the period is changing. And the soft music is playing. Sometimes it could just be light jazz music or Hawaiian music, or and that program's called Zen Bells. There are so many ways of softening the environment. By the way, the color of the walls is very important as well. And the lighting, you don't want any fluorescent lights in your school. And if any chance you have to put in skylights or natural lighting, or full spectrum lighting, naturally that's very valuable. And I know that in the large public schools like LA, it might be hard to get away from some of those, but you can actually on your own go out and purchase those long tube lights that fit into your fluorescent units and are non-fluorescent. I'm sure you'll have to do it at your own expense, but I would think it would be well worth it if you have an extra $50, $100 for your classroom. Or somebody else had, it looked like, was it Lerna? Okay. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm terrible at attending to who's raising their hand next, but thank you, Lerna.
Hello, thank you very much for this beautiful and inspiring stories that you take from the past, from your childhood till now. I am joining from Istanbul, and you were describing about your school that these young kids or the teenagers are in the nature. So I feel a bit curious, how is the relationship in your school with the technology? Because also from your childhood till now, we have this fact in our lives now, the cell phones and the pads. So how you regulate, is there any regulation for technology in your school? This is my question. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very controversial topic because, technology, if used in some ways, possibly creates a kind of an allure. It's a draw, and you go down into that hole, and it can be consuming. And some educators feel like students need to find their own way out of it, and other people find it to be related to addiction and want to stop it. And I'm not going to solve that problem for you today, except to say that we have pouches in every classroom, and every student is required to put their cell phone in the pouch when they enter into a class. There's another reason for doing that, aside from just the allure of technology and the distraction. And that is, we have to be very, very careful that our classrooms, even on Zoom, are not becoming windows to the world. The classroom is sacred space, and the teacher needs to make absolutely sure that what's happening in that classroom is private and protected, and the students can feel freely. Right now, with all the Zoom boxes, we even have to take a hard line with many of our parents who stick their head in right in the middle of class, and we have to explain, well, you wouldn't do that in a classroom. So the pouches are the main way we regulate at the school. Obviously, it's a problem. When Zoom first started 8 months ago, the students and the teachers were complaining bitterly about Zoom burnout. Eventually, we pointed out that they actually were not on their on their screen more than they had been before. It was about the same. It's whatever, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And now what's happening is that they're used to Zoom, and it's just simply a shift in what they're doing. And I know I am, and I know many of you are becoming a little more sensitive to the Zoom screen and starting to notice gestures and being able to have a sensitivity on Zoom that we didn't necessarily have before. It's not lifelike, but it's become a little more lifelike. And it's most likely that Zoom is here to stay, because it also invites people in that you want to invite in. I get to talk to a brilliant educator from Istanbul.
Thank you very much. And I just want to have one small question. So when the youngsters and the children are in the school, actually in the nature part of the school, they are still disconnected. These phones are somewhere, as you said, they are far away from their phones and they don't take any pictures, whatever, isn't it? Right? Yes.
I don't know the answer to that question, Lerna. I would just have to look into it. I'm just happy they're back there.
Okay. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Veda, I can't see everybody or all the chats.
May
so
I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, Nevin.
Oh yeah, sure, nice. So I just wanted to quickly say to the person who asked the question regarding what happens if someone has a teacher certificate. I'm a certified teacher and I'm currently working in a democratic school. But I was only working in public schools and becoming certified teacher because at that time there were no democratic schools in my country. So I think that you should first see how the person breathes before you turn them away. But my question to you, Stuart, would be: you mentioned the pockets of democracy which people can use in in their own work. Doesn't have to be in democratic schools. So, would you be able to tell more, like how a teacher in a public school would be able to introduce those pockets, especially in bigger public schools? Maybe if you're a small school and you're like the only IT teacher, you can do it. But what if you're in a big school? How do you do that?
Right. And I have two answers for that. First off, you have to be more masterful at Socratic method than you ever imagined. And sometimes that has to happen in student groups. And second of all, I just want to disclose that I have a background belief, which is that large schools just the design of a large school itself is the cause of a lot of these problems. And when I'm ruler, I'm going to break them down into schools within schools, as I'm sure Jerry's going to do over there too, right, Jerry? So I can't really solve all the problems that you have when you put more than 250 or so people together. Systems start to change. I have a whole website called the Small Schools Coalition, which details in paper after paper exactly what happens when you hit up to about 200, when you hit up to about 400 kids, when you hit up to 700. And at a certain point, you cannot do this kind of work. So I don't have all of the best answers, other than being as Socratic as possible, as I get the sense that Zena is doing over there. It sounds like Derry might have a solution here too.
Well, I was just going to say that I didn't get fired. I got put in charge of 240 kids of all the same age, which is crazy. I absolutely don't believe in single age groups. But eventually I became a high school principal, and what we did was break an 850 kid high school down into 4 groups. We created 4 high schools within the high school, as it were. I'm going to say a bit more about that in my talk on Friday. If whoever it was asked the question would like to come, be great to see you there.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, Derry, once again, you're all welcome to go onto the Small Schools Coalition website and get all kinds of research on that. And what it enables you to do is to influence your principal to do or superintendent do extremely courageous things, such as Derry has done. And it also empowers you, if you're in a small school, to have the research to tell your constituencies the beauty and power of the work that you do.
Our theory was, Stuart, that 200 is really too many, but we were aiming for 170. I wanted to create 5 because that's about the right number that can sit round in a circle and everybody can actually know who everybody else is. And this is what I felt was terribly important.
Yeah, and we have all that research for you, Derry, and everyone else on group size. I mean, whether or not 12 is the optimal circle size, how many of those circles you can have, whether 150 is a good number, and it looks like Jerry's got right here.
Well, I think that there's this tendency for the smaller school to be more and more supportive of individual students, and I think somebody's rule of thumb is you can go up to where you at least know everybody's name. I think that was Debbie Meyer, but size alone doesn't do it. Of course, it's the philosophy. And what's interesting is a while back, I think really Gates became aware of the success of our schools and thought it was just size. So he took these big schools and broke them down into smaller schools, but didn't really change their philosophy, and it didn't work. And so they abandoned that and went on to something else. So size alone doesn't do it. Actually, a good sized school like the School of Self-Determination in Moscow with 650 schools manages to be a great place for kids. So I think that is a tendency, but the key is the philosophy of education.
Could I just add that in my school, each of the houses of, say, 200 kids was broken down into 8 groups of 25, and those 25s were mixed age groups, 11 to 17.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, I think that one of another pocket that may not be possible for large schools, though, is this fascinating concept of age mixing. If you do it right, it's powerful, and brings us back to the real roots of education. Good on you for that.
We've got a question in the chat box. It's Rajita Gopinath. She's asking you, are there any references or reading materials for the Socratic method?
Oh, there are probably too many to even winnow it down. I have one that I love. I think it's called The Socratic Way. But you could just go on to your favorite bookstore or book website and read around about the background of some of the authors. And there you could spend your whole life reading books on Socratic method and inquiry-based instruction, and the promotion of intrinsic motivation, and the promotion of student curiosity as a core school value. Great question.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, Richard, you can hop in to the mic.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, Stuart.
Hi,
Gary, Jerry, good to see you. Stuart, really enjoyed the talk. So much good stuff in it. Thank you. I'm the one who's filling up the chat box a little bit. I'm working really hard on a conference that's going to kick off on November 20th, trying to address the concern that we're still too much talking among ourselves. We have to somehow or other find a way to generate the large community conversations that will hold the school board officials responsible, but also establish what we need for lasting change. It can't be just a visit to an authority and have them receptive for a year or two. It has to be something that gets embedded into the community. This conference is really designed how to mobilize communities, how to try to get our messages out to everybody in that community, that you get a really robust community conversation. I put in a couple of things also. The 250 number has been coming up to me over years. And what that is it's a number apparently that goes back to Scottish clan. And that was the number at which they found that anonymity started to creep into a community if you went beyond that number. And it's a number, though, that is based on people coming together at a very early age and staying together. So you don't have a lot of attrition. You can't have a school that's not turning over a lot of people. And as Jerry said, you need the philosophy that's right to that multi-age environment. So where we're at, as I see it, is we have a lot of ideas out there. What we need is these teachers that are prepared to take a risk, be democratic, and try out schools within schools, the individual classes, grade 11, like, or 11-year-olds like Jerry had, and how to be democratic with them. Just a pile of things going on out in the community that make it a great community. Thanks for all that time. That was a long chunk I stole.
Thank you, Richard.
Yes, you're all welcome to hop into the mic and take some Stuart GRAUER's time.
Stuart, this is Rita Bouchard from Los Angeles, and I actually I used to teach at Pacifica, and that's how I learned about Jerry Mintz. Hi, Jerry. And Zena Pliska was a parent. This was years ago, but Pacifica was I guess the freest public school in Los Angeles Unified. We were non-compassionate, non-violent communication, no grades, mixed age levels. And, you know, the district, we didn't have enough money to stay viable, and we weren't very liked by the district. And so we, after 10 years, closed. But my question for you right now is, how do you work with families or parents who come into your school and they accept your mission initially, but then they try to influence you and change it? How do you work with that? Because I see that's happening with our school right now, another school I'm in. Thank you.
Well, assuming that you're not referring to a democratic school where that's supposed to happen, but the Grauer School is not a democratic school in that sense. We have people who lie their way into the school all the time. They think they're going to get close personal attention and lots of counseling and great teachers, and they'll say anything to get into school, and it's very frustrating. So yes, of course I've had that. And those have probably been, I would say in 30 years, those might be the most difficult encounters I've had. And they don't end well. I mean, you just have to, you cannot let a lie stand, period. You may not let a lie stand. You have to speak up. Now, having said that, a lot of parents, are doing this out of fear or concern. They think that if they don't micromanage their kid and make sure the kid is doing a lot of homework, then they're not being good as a parent. So you would be shocked at how many parents I've brought into my office and kind of fired. You know, you're fired. You have to get a hobby other than your own child. Sometimes they actually love hearing that. And I used the word permission before. I have to say that when you tell that truth in a compassionate way, it's possible you're going to get a firestorm back. But I would say most of the time, they've just said, just felt this wonderful sense of relief. So you have to make sure that this kickback that you're getting is not coming from a place of fear, if not even pain from an earlier episode, which it often is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Bruno has a question. Bruno?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
I can, Bruno, thank you.
Great. First of all, thank you so much for such an interesting introduction and ideas and everything. It's so encouraging to listen to these type of things, especially when we are stuck on a really mainstream system. I'm talking from Finland, and I'm a classroom teacher student, so I'm really embedded in that traditional idea. But my question and comment, it's a bit related to the idea of making change sustainable, right? Because we all are here thinking about a different way of understanding education with certain values behind what we believe. But if we see the current situation of the world where certain politicians are being elected over and over with totally opposite values and many things are going on a really opposite way of maybe what you were talking on how your school is or how we would like our schools to be. So how can we operate or how can we be in this world where the whole world seems to be going in a totally opposite direction to what we would like in our school? So what do you think about it?
Thank you, Bruno. I was afraid somebody would ask that question, and I can only answer it for myself. And this is definitely not everybody's answer, but I'm clear on this. We live in a toxic world. We live in a world that some aspects of it might arguably appear to be hopeless. And I am creating my community, my space, my place, and imbuing it with values of love and peace. And that community is fairly small. My work is not going to save the forests of the world, and it's not going to bring world peace. I'm creating a sustainable, small community. Every one of the people, things are constantly trying to invade, make their way in, because we have permeable boundaries. But those aren't my work. I've seen so many times our students, and if I work this way, then I know that my students go out and they create Grauer schools or they create nonprofits, as many of them have. That it's for them to go out into the world and save the forests. Bruno, that just simply is not my work. Otherwise, if it was my work, I would not be able to create a small, loving community.
Thank you.
We have Gail Hanlon. Yes.
Hi, sorry. Yes, I work with a lot of trauma experience with families and kids, and being in trauma informed, when you were talking about fear, that's a lot where their trauma, and this can be from any source, affects their ability to progress and develop and open themselves. So even this year has affected people with what's going on and how they adapt. And that has brought forward a lot of trauma. How do you perceive that in your situation?
Well, we all have our traumas in life. And you mentioned fear. I think trauma really is fear embodied. And when I taught much more younger kids, but even to some extent with the older ones, I spent a lot of time doing that kind of work, whether it's breathing or guided imagery, or even coordination activities. And there has to be a physical element to doing work like that.
Thank you. Anybody would like to hop in? How much time do we have, Stuart GRAUER?
I think we're over time, 3 minutes. So maybe, I know you have other things.
Can I come in?
No, for us, we have another 15, 20 minutes, Stuart. So
Okay,
it's
I
up
want
to
to be respectful of everybody's time, but Veda, you run the show here.
Can I come in?
Yeah, we have about 20 minutes for us. It's up to you, Stuart.
Okay, I can go till for another 20 minutes.
All right. Okay. Yeah,
but
sure.
Can I ask? Can I?
Yes, Srivas.
Yeah. Great, Stuart. Wonderful. We heard everything coming from your heart. The kind of connectivity you or anybody who would want to be in the natural horizons, the kind of connectivity that is there. You have expressed that in the most beautiful way. Well, my name is Srinivas Kumar Errapotu, and the name of our activity is called Sky Transformations. We are currently working on the 360-degree transformations in several spaces. And currently we are on a high focus in the school space. So we are working on the transformations in the school space. And we work on problem solving. And the methodology of doing that is by a lot of collaborative work. And so I feel that IDEC and other forums and great experienced people like you, we should all collaborate on a very big way and start supporting each other on the problem solving exercise so that we leave a bigger space for the future generation. And I would like to connect with you all in that regard. And specific question to you is, how are you able to effectively work with the small schools? Could you give us a couple of tips on that arena, please?
I'd like you to dial a little further into this idea of working with a small school. What do you have in mind that you're really looking for here?
Well, small schools, by the size of them, they could have a series of problems on one side, and on the other side, being small is a big joy.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the working environment is concerned, it's a big joy working in the small space. But
yeah,
there are other economic and other issues that would crop up. And by being small, they may not venture into going on a bigger connectivity. See, after all, see, every human being has got his own passions and space. And if there are 120 children or 250 children, actually
can we be to the point, because we may have other questions as well. So we have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I can answer you now. I think I understand where you're going.
Right.
I think there's a fallacy, a myth of bigness, that if you're surrounded with 1,000 kids, you have all this choice. But that's not what the research bears out. And I think Derry and I were both referring to that. And if you look at the Small Schools Coalition website, you'll see that things like sympathy groups and group sizes and the number of people that are actually connecting increases in a small environment because of the sense of safety, emotional safety that's pervasive in these smaller environments. Kids will have more friends. So if somebody has adjustment problems and says, well, I need 1,000 kids to have a friend, that's not because of the size of the school. So it turns out that in schools of, turns out somewhere 240 or 220 or less, and I have lots of papers on this, that people have, and I can even show you this research in charts and surveys. They have higher connectedness, higher engagement, and more friends, and actually greater happiness levels in schools that are not suffering from this myth of bigness. There's another thing, a point here, and that's that somebody says, I want to be on the theater group, and you only have a singing group. Well, it turns out that our students, and most of us, don't join the singing group or the theater group because we think we're going to be a great theater star. We join it because in our past experience, that's where we got acknowledgement and connection. And the minute they switch and they say, well, you don't have a theater group at your school, try the chorus. The minute they experience that connection and that engagement, they're going to be even happier than they were. So some of these things you're addressing are what I call the myth of bigness.
Well, I would like to have a continuing dialogue with you and similar things so that we can do better.
Thank you, Srinivasanji.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Next question. Yes, Derry.
Maybe I've had my fair share, but the comment and a question. One of the bits of feedback on having all age groups of kids was very interesting. The senior, but this was a small town of 6,000 people and surrounding villages. But the local police chief sent his kids to our school. And he always said, well, one of the reasons we have such a low crime in the town is because of these mixed age experiences that the kids have had in the school. And you haven't said much about community, Stuart. What's the kind of relationship between your school and your local community?
Wonderful, Derry. First off, with respect to age mixing, because we have communities within communities at the school itself, there's really interesting research that is very accessible to all of you about age mixing. And originally, that's the way all people learned. And the idea that everybody would be given an elder is not correct in terms of evolution. And I think Peter Gray addresses this very well as well. Our mission as a school is absolutely to have permeable boundaries, and we have a van pool. We're on the road, going to the city hall, going to the local beaches. We don't see the school as a box on a block of the street. We see it as all of our teachers are empowered to take the kids in and out of class as much as possible. Our community, we have a robust community service program that we pay a lot of attention to, that we make a lot of announcements about, give a lot of acknowledgements about, so that we can get kids out there. And we're inviting guests in constantly. So that's the best way I can answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we've come towards the end of this session. We will take one more last question or one more comment, and then we'll move on to the next session, okay? And we'll thank Stuart after that. Yes, Zena, I can see your hands.
Hi, again, thank you so much. I think, again, I'm going to come back to accessibility in public schools. So as a parent, I really found that in Los Angeles, these schools, in Los Angeles proper, these schools have moved more toward high stakes data as opposed to what you're talking about. And as a parent, it was really hard to find a school for my child. And so again, accessibility, in Los Angeles, these schools cost $35,000 a year, and are extremely selective. So, I mean, most people cannot experience this. And I go to many of these conferences, Penn and many of the independent schools, whom I love and take and draw from your experience. But at the end of the day, I believe in equity, and I'm wondering, I don't know if there isn't an answer. I'm only posing the question because I think there are multiple answers, and I don't know if they're answers. Feedback. I'm looking for feedback, not answers.
Yeah, so, I was unable to do the work I needed to do in a very large system, not just because it was a public school, but in any large organization, I couldn't do my work. I am absolutely astonished at how much you evidently do. I hope you'll stay the course. The kids need you. In my school, the endowment program and the financial aid providing access has grown every single year for 10 years in a row. And you've got New Road School up there in LA, which 50% of the kids are getting in full access. That's a pretty good percentage. I aspire to that as well. That's the path that we have to stay on. Equity is extremely important, and everybody has to do everything they can.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart, very, very much. We're extremely happy and pleased to have your talk, and it was really wonderful. Most of the comments you've got a lot of positive comments, and from the heart, the comments seems to be extremely positive and inspiring. Thank you so much. I missed a bit because I had to answer some emails, but I was listening to you very carefully, and you really took us to your world. We could really connect what you were talking about. But in between,
Vita, is there any chance you can email me the chat? So I'm not going to have a chance to read all of it right away.
Sure. We'll email you a PDF. I think we can get a PDF, right? Yes. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Wonderful questions.
Yeah, let's give some hug like this. Let's like this, a hug. Okay. Thank you. Hope to see you in Nepal, Stuart, sometime.
I hope so too. Thank you very much. Beautiful moderating. And thank you once again, everybody. I love being in your presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, all the participants, I have some announcements to make before we move on to the next session. And these are announcements regarding the IDEC, the upcoming programs and what we have been planning. So there is a Baobab space that we have organized. It's a Baobab Cafe. So there is a link which is 24/7 open. So you can simply hop into the link and you can start chatting. You can talk about whatever you want. So that Baobab space link is available on our website, on the Web-IDEC website, or also I have sent you emails and newsletters. The link is there. And the next one is tomorrow we are live streaming our Nepali biggest festival, Dasai celebration. So you can also join in. It will be at around 10:15 Nepali time. Probably it won't be very suitable for Europe, but I think it will be quite good for other continents. And we have general meetings every day, twice, and you can also come in and make announcements. We'll sing together. We'll try to make some, do some kind of movements together to make this conference a very, very inclusive and very interesting one. And also another one, tomorrow there is Epidec meeting at 4 o'clock Nepali time. You will also receive about this in your emails. So please check that also. And also those who are willing to make donations to the Web-IDEC, please do so, because with your help, I think we'll be able to have more people in the conference. So these are the announcements. And the next talk is going to be Armel 6. She's going to give a talk in French. It won't be translated, so you can be there. And thank you very much.
Veda, she will give, Veda.
Yes, yes.
She will give a talk in English the 2nd of November.
Okay, the talk is going to be in English on the 2nd of November. Yeah. And if you have any questions to Stuart, you can send us and we'll forward it to him.
Stuart, okay. You have to make Web-IDEC host.
This Bob space, what are the timings we can get connected in the Bob space?
Bob space is 24 hours open.
Oh, wonderful.
24/7. You can just simply hop in, chat with one another. So it's always there.
If you have the chance to be two.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's try to